How you doing there? Welcome back to Babylon Talmud. Today we're studying Daf Chof Ches, Daf 28 of Masechta BavaKama. Friends. Let me tell you something. I have a feeling this is going to be a long one. First of all, we have like half an Amud to do on Chof Zayin Amud Beis. But also, I don't know, it took a really long time to review. I have a feeling it's going to be a long one. BavaKama's been a little bit... takes time. I mentioned it recently. BavaKama takes time. It's very good. But it takes time. There's going to be a big sugi today about Ovid Inish Dina Lenafshe. That's going to be a big chunk of the sugi. Then Borbishus Arab Mishtikol. We got a lot going on here. Tomorrow's daf also is going to be slow. All right, let's go. Okay, we're on Daf Chof Zayin Amud Beis. Honestly, just like about halfway through the Amud. Shalach le Rav Chizda le Rav Nachman. It's the beginning of the line. You found it? Shalach le Rav Chizda le Rav Nachman. About halfway through the Amud. Hare Amu le Akuva Shalish v'lebeita Chomish v'las Nokeres Shlosh Esrei. Lefadna Demara v'lekupina Demara Mai. Any volunteers? So again, Shalach le Rav Chizda Rav Nachman. So Rav Chizda sends to Rav Nachman. What does he send? Hari Amar, they said, the Rekuva Shalish, a fellow, Ruvain knees Shimon in the face. We have to love each other. There's no kneeing people in the face, Chaver. V'leb'ito mamish, or if he kicks him. V'las nokeres, or if he takes the saddle of a donkey or something and he whacks him. Shlosh esrei, so 13 sellers. Right, so if you do these things, you knee somebody in the face, kick him, whack him with like a saddle. So we was talking about boshes payments, right? The boshes payment. It's embarrassing to get whacked with a saddle. So it's 13 sellers for boshes. So the shaila is lefanda demara. What if you hit somebody with the handle of a shovel? Lukupina demara, or like the shovel part of a shovel. This is not how we behave. Some of the people in the neighborhood where I live, not the immediate neighborhood, about an hour or two drive from here, they hit people with shovels. We don't do that. We don't do that. But anyways, what's the halacha? What's the halacha with the handle of a shovel, or with the shovel part of a shovel? Shalach le Rav Chizda, shalach le. So if Nachman sends to Rav Chizda, Chizde, knoso kamagbis bebavel. What are you collect? Right, boshes, of course, is a knas, right? It's a fine, meaning a person gets hurt, so you pay for the damages, right? The embarrassment is an additional payment that's not directly connected to the injury that was caused. So that's a fine. Now, as it's come up a few times, fines were not adjudicated and were not judged in Bavel. So therefore, Rav Nachman sends to Rav Chizda, I don't understand, Rav Chizda, what's going on? Tell me, what, are you collecting fines over here in Bavel? So Rav Nachman wants to know, tell me exactly, why do you want to know about somebody who gets hit with a shovel? So Shalach le. So Rav Chizda sends to Rav Nachman, Dao Gargusa, there was a Gargusa. What's a Gargusa? A Gargusa. There was like a water, like a body of water. The Veitre, right? There was like, a well or something. It was a collection of water that was shared by two parties, Reuven and Shimon. The Chol Yom Ha'ava Dali Chad Minayu, and they would switch off days, right? I guess on Shabbos it was probably not being used, and then Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday they alternated. One day Reuven would have access to the water, the other day Shimon would have access. Also Chad Kadali B'Yoyma Deloi delay. Now it's Sunday. It's Reuven's day. Comes Shimon, and he's taking the water on Sunday. So Amale Yomi Didiu. So Reuven says, Shimon, what are you doing? It's Sunday. Sunday is when I collect water. Le'ashgach Bey. Shimon didn't really care. Shokol Pando Demoro Machye. So Reuven took the handle of a shovel and he hit Shimon. So you know what Rav Nachman responded to Rav Chizda? Rav Nachman says, actually, Reuven was right. Actually, Reuven was right. Reuven was what was right to take the law into his own hands and hit Shimon. Says of Nachman that Reuven could have hit Shimon 100 times. That even according to the opinion that we're going to see in a second, that a person cannot take the law into his own hands, that everyone agrees, however, that if it's in a place of loss, that if it's to prevent loss, that by the time you go to Bezdin to try to get this sorted out, you get to court and whatever, you're going to lose out. So then you can take the law into your own hands, even if we're talking about hitting somebody with a shovel. So now in this case, Shimon is taking the water right now. By the time Reuven goes to Bezdin and gets a case, who knows what Shimon would have already taken from him, and maybe he dried out the water and there's nothing left. And so in order to prevent imminent loss, Reuven can prevent Shimon physically from taking the water. And this is going to be kind of our sugya really until the end of the next Amud. Is Ovid inish dina lenafshe, that can a person take the law into his own hands? The itmar that it was stated, Rav Yehuda Amar says, Rav Yehuda, lo Ovid inish dina lenafshe, a person may not take the law into his own hands. Rav Nachman Amar, Ovid inish dina lenafshe, whereas Rav Nachman says, a fellow may take the law into his own hands. And where there is a loss, if it's to prevent an imminent loss, well then everyone agrees, David inish dina lenafshe, that a fellow can take the law into his own hands. And in this case, with the water, everyone would agree that Reuven it would be within his rights to take the law into his own hands and do whatever it takes to prevent Shimon from taking the water. Kiplige heicha delek upseda, and where they argue is where there's no imminent loss, and you could go to Bezdin. Rav Yehuda Amar lo avid inish dina lenafshe dechem delek upseda lezel kame dayono. That Rav Yehuda says, let's read it again. Lo avid inish dina lenafshe, says Rav Yehuda that a person may not take the law into his own hands because they cave in delek upseda, because since if you wait if you go to Bezdin, and yeah, sure, it's by the time you get a court date or whatever it is, it's going to take time. But if at the end of the day you're not going to lose anything extra by waiting for the court date, well then lezel kamedayana, go to court and get it settled. Rav Nachman says, Rav Nachman, look, why do you have to waste your time? Ovid inish dina lenafshe, a fellow can take the law into his own hands. They came into bedin Ovid, as long as he knows that what he's doing is right. Lo tarich, he doesn't need to go through all the extra steps of scheduling a court date and all that kind of stuff. But I guess he would have to know that he's right. How does he know? Isn't kind of the point of court to determine who's right? Whatever it is, I don't know. Says Rav Nachman, if he knows he's right, and Reuven and Shimon had a contract, I don't know. Reuven knows it's Sunday, right? He's allowed to take his stuff, So and this would be even in a case where there's no loss. I mean, in the case of the water, there was actually imminent loss. So even Rav Yehuda would agree that Reuven could take the law into his own hands. But in a case where there isn't imminent loss, but it's a headache to go to Bezdin, if he knows that. He's is that the right word? Within his rights or something? Within, I don't know. If he knows that he's allowed to take he can take the law into his own hands. So he can take the law into his own hands. What do you want me to tell you? Let's go weiter. So now, most of Rav Kana asks a kasha on Rav Yehuda. Ben Bagbag Omer says Ben Bagbag says Ben Bagbag. Alti koni slichotzer chavercha litol babel yod es shelcha shelo birshus. Shema teroi olav kiganef. Let's read that again. Says Ben Bagbag, Alti koni slichotzer chavercha litol es shelcha shelo birshus. Right? If Shimon's got something that belongs to Reuven shouldn't sneak into Shimon's chotzer to go take it back, because he's going to look Shema teroi olav kiganef. You're going to look like a ganef. Rather, rather break his teeth and and say, look, I'm taking my thing. So it sounds like, even if it's Shelo b'makom pseida, I don't know, he's not, it doesn't seem like there's imminent loss, he can technically go to Bezdin, but still it seems like we're saying, Ruvain could say, I'm taking my thing, taking the law into my own hands. Imcha, Amale Imcha. So Rav Yehuda responds, he says, this is the best you got. Ben Bagbag, Yichidoyahu, Ufliger Abonon Ole. Look, you're quoting me Ben Bagbag. That's Ben Bagbag's opinion. He can take the law into his own hands. The Chacham argue on Ben Bagbag and says that he cannot take the law into his own hands. So there. Rabbi Yanai says, my shvur is Shinov. Rabbi Yanai says that you can even explain that Ben Bagbag is like Rav Yehuda, because what does it mean, break his teeth? Badin. Break his teeth in court. Right? Let him be proven wrong in court. Iachi. But if that's the case that we're talking about in court, then that doesn't really make sense, because it says shvur shino ve'emorlo ve'omrim mi ba'ilei. If it was talking about Bezdin, it should be plural, it should be ve'omrim. Shaliani notel shalohu notel mi ba'ilei. And instead of saying, I'm taking my stuff, if it's the court, then it's the court saying, let him take his stuff. So, therefore, Kasha, we have some trouble with Rabbi Yanai's attempt. Tashma, come in here. Shorsha Allah al gabe chaveiroi lehorgo. Uva balatachton v'shimet es shelo v'nofel elyon v'meis potter ma'la b'muad deleka pseida. Cheve, you get anybody want to volunteer to explain what this means? So you have two oxen. Let's call it the mazik and the nizak. Okay, I don't know. Do I have a better way to say? I don't want to say Reuven the shor and Shimon the shor, because then it gets complicated. Because then Reuven the shor's owner is Reuven, and then. So what should we do? What should we do? If I just say the mazik and the nizak, would that work? The nizak is the shore that's getting damaged. The mazik is the shore that's damaging. Let's just do that. And Reuven is the owner of the shore hanizak. Reuven is the owner of the ox that is getting damaged. Okay, so now. Tashma, come in here. Shorsha Allah agabe chaver. So the mazik jumps on the nizak. Sounds like a wrestling match. Lehargo. And the mazik wants to kill the nizak. Uva ba'ala tachton. And Reuven, who is the owner of the nizak, comes v'shimet es shelo, and he extracts the nizak. He extracts his shore so that his shore will not die. V'nofel olav elyon v'mes. And then the mazik falls to the ground and dies. Potter. So we say that Reuven is potter. So it seems that Reuven took the law into his own hands, right? He saw that his shore, his ox was getting pummeled, and he says, I won't stand for it, and he extracted his shore. In the process, the mazik died, and nonetheless, Reuven is potter. Ma'ala b'muad, and let's say it's talking about a shor muad. Now, since it's a shor muad, right, the mazik, so the owner of the shor muad, let's say Shimon, would have to pay Reuven in full, right? Because if Shimon's shor, the mazik, was a shor muad, so Reuven would get paid in full, which means that if he would have just let the mazik kill his shor, if he would have let Shimon's shor kill his shore, maybe that's a better way to do it. Instead of the mazik and the nizak, just say Reuven is the owner of the ox that's getting hurt, and Shimon is the owner of the ox that's hurting. So that's maybe a better way. Reuven's shore and Shimon's shore. So does that work? So it's talking about where Shimon's shore was a shore muad, and therefore anyway, right? If Reuven would have just not gotten involved, not taken the law into his own hands, just let Shimon's ox kill his own ox, he would then go to Bezdin and claim full damages because Shimon's shore was a shor muad. And even so, we're saying that he was allowed to. He's potter. He was allowed to extract his shore, which means that you're allowed to take the law into your own hands, even when there is no loss, because he could have gone to Bezdin, but still he was permitted to take the law into his own hands. So it's Kashan of Yehuda. Right, so my lab, the muad, the lekab seder. Let's say that Shimon's shore was a shor muad, and Reuven would not have lost out anything, but still he's allowed to take the law into his own hands. Lo bitam, dikab seder. No, Shimon's ox was a short tam. And therefore, if Reuven would have gone to Bezdin, he would have only gotten half damages, which it means that he would have lost out. So therefore, in order to prevent the loss, he was permitted to extract his shore, and even though Shimon's shore then died, Reuven is potter, because he was allowed to take the law into his own hands in order to prevent loss. But if that's the case, that we're talking about a short time, Ema Seifa, I'll tell you the Seifa of the Brisa. If instead of extracting his own ox, he pushed Shimon's ox, Vames, and Shimon's ox dies, Chayav, then Reuven is Chayav. V'ibetam, and if we're talking about, and Reuven is Chayav. V'ibetam, if we're talking about a short time, am I Chayav? Why would he be chayiv in that case if we're talking about a short time? Because we said he's allowed to do whatever he needs to in order to prevent a loss, right? You only get paid 50%. So to prevent the loss, he can do whatever he wants if we're talking about a short time. So we say, no, even though it's talking about we say that it's talking about a short time, but the reason why it'd be chayiv in the Sefer is because shahaylo lishamto v'lo shamto. Because instead of pushing Shimon's ox, he could have just removed his own ox, slipped out his own ox, and avoided causing the damage to Shimon's ox, and that is why he is chayiv. So interesting, meaning, so even though he was allowed to take the law into his own hands according to everybody, since we're talking about a short time, but still, if he could have done it in a way that would have prevented Shimon's ox from dying, he should have done that, i.e. if he could have slipped out his own ox rather than pushing Shimon's ox. Okay, fine. What do you want me to tell you? Tashma, come in here. Hamemale chatzur chavero kadayayin v'chadei shemen. So, if Reuven fills up Shimon's chatzur with pitchers of wine and pitchers of oil. Okay, so Reuven's filling up Shimon's chatzur with pitchers of wine and pitchers of oil, which is, causing a loss to Shimon. He doesn't have his chatzur anymore. Baal chatzur mishaber v'yotze. Although I guess that this is a situation where I guess he could have gone to Bezdin, right? So he could have gone to Bezdin, right? Meaning he's not. Right? Reuven's filling up his chatzur with like jugs and stuff. So it's definitely super annoying for Shimon, but he could just go to Bezdin, and Bezdin will, he's not going to lose out anything by going to Bezdin. So we're saying mishaber v'yotze, mishaber v'nichnos. So it's about chatzor mishaber v'yotze, mishaber v'nichnos. Shimon can just go in and out of his chatzor and break whatever he wants. So it sounds like he's allowed to take the law into his own hands, even though instead of he doesn't have to go to Bezdin. So it says of Nachman Yitzchak, you can explain it according to a Yehuda that it means that no, he can't just take the law into his own hands. He could break stuff on his way out to Bezdin. He could break stuff when he's coming back to get like rayas and stuff, like proofs that it's his chatzor, and Reuven can't do that, but he can't just break whatever he wants. Can't take the law into his own hands. Tashma, come in here. Minayin lenirtzo shekolu lo yomav. So how do you know that in the situation of a doorman, who remembers what a doorman is? Of course, in Babylon Talmud, a doorman is an Eved Ivri, a Jewish Eved, who decides after 6 years that he wants to stick around. So we have him stand next to the door, we nail his ear into the door, and we leave him there. So at least according to our joke, we leave him there. So Tashma, so how do I know that comes Yovel, right? Because a doorman is only a doorman until Yovel. Yovel, he's released. So how do we know that comes Yovel? Virabba Masai Bolotes, and the Adon is like, okay, doorman, you got to get out of here. Vichaval v'asobo Chabura, and the Adon hits the Eved Ivri and hurts the Eved Ivri, Shehu Potter, that he's nonetheless going to be Potter, that he took the law into his own hands, and I guess the Eved Ivri didn't want to leave, the doorman didn't want to leave, and then the Adon hits him. The Adon is Potter. Sounds like he's Potter for taking the law into his own hands. So how do we know that he's Potter? Tamalomer, the pasuk says, Lo sikhu kofer lashuv, and the way that we're making a drasha means lo sikhu kofer l'shav, meaning that the adon is not liable for any payments in the situation where the doorman insists on returning to his house and staying with him. The adon is not chayv. So we see that even though he could take him to Bezdin, still he took matters into his own hands and he is potter. So acha b'maya skinon be'avda ganva. So no, here it's talking about where the doorman stole from him, and that's why he was allowed to take matters into his own hands, because it was hefsid. Ad o idna lo gonav v'hashta gonav. But for the Gemara, why are we assuming that the doorman stole something? The doorman's been there, for a long time. He has never been a thief. All of a sudden, now he becomes a thief? Yes, because Ada Idna have a emsa derabe ole hashta leisle emsa derabe ole. Up until now, when the doorman was an eved, so he had sort of the the fear, the authority, the intimidation of his adon. But now that he's no longer a doorman, comes the Jubilee year, he goes free. So then he doesn't have that sort of intimidation anymore, and therefore he was chutzpahdik and he stole epis. And in order to prevent the loss, that is why the adon was allowed to take matters into his own hands. Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak Amar says, Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak be'evet shemasul l'rabba shivcha k'nainis. Says Rav Nachman bar Yitzchak, the reason why the adon was potter for hitting the doorman was because it's talking about a doorman who the adon had given him an eved a shivcha k'nainis to have babies with, and so long as he was a doorman, he was allowed to be with her. But now that he's no longer a doorman, he's not allowed to be with her. And he was sticking around, and he was being with her, and he was doing an avera. So that is why the adon was allowed to hit him, because he was doing an avera. Up until now, the doorman was with his shifcha kanainis in a permitted way, as long as he was a doorman. But now that he's no longer a doorman because of the Jubilee year, he was doing something asur, and that is why the adon is potter for striking him. Tashma, come in here. This was our Mishnah, right? That if somebody, Ruvain leaves a jug in Rishus Harabim, and then Shimon trips on it, Shibra, and he breaks the jug, potter. Shimon is potter. He doesn't have to pay Ruvain for the jug. Time with the niskoba. The reason is because Rashi points out that according to Rav, it's talking about where Ruvain kind of filled up, right? We learned this yesterday, right? According to Rav, it's talking about where Ruvain kind of filled up all of Rishus Harabim with the jugs. And we're saying that, so of course he's not allowed to fill up all of Rishus Harabim. And we're saying that if Shimon tripped on it, he's potter, he doesn't have to pay for breaking the jug. But Hashibra, chai. But if Shimon intentionally broke the jug, he would be chayiv. So in this case, what does Rashi say? Vukma Rab le'el. I'm like, I don't know, Rashi, 15, 20 lines into the Rashi, into the thin lines. Vukma Rab le'el b'memale rishus harabim kula chavios amalo ovid inish dina nafshe afilu b'makom pseida. So here there is pseida, because I guess what? Because he's filling up all of Rishus Harabim, and I guess therefore it's like I don't know, losing out maybe because he can't use Rishus Harabim anymore or something like that. Okay, fine. All right. No, so what are we saying? So saying Shibra Chayiv. So what we want to say is that even in a situation of, so here we're going to the opposite extreme, right? Right now we assume that b'makom pseida, everyone would agree that you can take matters into your own hands. Yet over here we're saying that b'makom pseida, because the whole Rishus Harabim was being filled up with with Ruvain's jugs. We're saying that, look, if Shimon trips on it, he's potter, but if he breaks it intentionally, then he's going to be chayav, even, right, for taking the law into his own hands, even though it's b'makom pseida. So Amr of Zvid Mishmei Derava says Zvid Mishmei Derava hu adin afilu shibra. No, even if he intentionally broke the jugs, he would be potter. V'hai dikatoni niskol the reason why Davka talks about if he tripped, I did the Kabbalah Misnei Seifa, because since in the Seifa of the Mishnah it says Im Huzak, that if Shimon got hurt, Balabayis Chayiv Benizko, that Ruvain would have to pay Shimon for his damages. The Davka Niskol, that is Davka if Shimon tripped and got hurt, Ruvain would be Chayiv. Aval Shiber, but if Shimon intentionally kicked the vessels and got hurt, lo, then Ruvain would not be Chayiv. Dehu Ozik Nafshe, because Shimon hurt himself by intentionally kicking the jug. So Katani Reisha Nisk also, because in the Seifa, Davka Ruvain would be Chayiv if Shimon tripped over the jugs, but not if he intentionally broke the jugs. So because we're talking about tripping specifically in the Seifa, so also in the Reisha we mention tripping, but truthfully, even if he intentionally broke the vessel, it would be he would be potter, since it was b'makom pseida. He could take matters into his own hands. Tashma, come in here. Vikatzosa es kapo. Vikatzosa es kapo. Mammon. Okay, so this was, of course, the pasuk from yesterday that we explained with the parish of Reb Fali Tesler, where Reuven and Shimon are fighting, and Reuven's wife grabs Shimon's junk. So vikatzosa is kappa. So it says that we cut off her hand. Mammon. Now, of course, in Yiddishkeit we don't cut off people's hands. We're not the Taliban. But we pay money. So be'etzem, she is chayeves for literally taking matters into her own hands. And right, so we're saying that she is chayeves for taking matters into her own hands. My lab, b'she'ena yichol la'atzil aydei davar acher. And let's assume that it's talking about even in a situation where she had no choice. Right? Her husband Reuven was getting makis. Shimon was giving Reuven makis. So she had no choice. And she took matters into her own hands, and we're saying that she's chayeves. Lo she'ichola lehatzil aydei davar acher. No, there were other options, and that is why she is chayeves. Aval eni yichol lehatzil aydei davar acher petura. But if there were no other options, then she would be petura because it's b'makom pseida. Yachi, if that's the case, adutani seifa v'shalcha yado prada shliach bezdin. But the Sefer of the Brisa continues, and it says that she sends her hand to the exclusion of if a Shaliach Bezdin gets involved, he would be potter. So we're already making distinctions over here. So liflog v'niles nebedida. So let's make this distinction as well. When do we say that she will be chayeves? Only in a situation where she would have been able to. There were different options of how she could have saved her husband Reuven. But if she would have been able to save in some other, but if there was no other way to save her husband, then she would be petura, right? So if that's the case, that that there's a distinction between if there were other options or not, then we should have listed that. Hachinami kamer, no, ein hachinami. This is how to understand it. When do we say that she's chayeves? When there were other options for how she could have saved her husband. But if there was no other way for her to save her husband Reuven other than to grab Shimon's junk, nice yada kishliach. So then she becomes like a shliach bezdin. If there was no other options, then she's like a shliach bezdin, and she's petura. So it's kind of one long flow. Tashma, come in here. Okay, in this case, wow, I'm like getting a shtickle headache. This is not easy stuff. Again, it's not Yavamis. It's not. If this was Yavamis, it would be a splitting headache. It's not a splitting headache, but it's like the kind of headache that says like, hey, pay attention. Like, is my brain talking? You need to sleep more and stop bothering me. It's like that kind of a headache. Toshma. So if you have a guy and he has a field, and annoyingly for him, there's a public thoroughfare that runs through his field. Okay? There's a public thoroughfare running through his field. Natla v'nasul lehem min hatzad. So he decides, you know what I'm going to do? This is annoying. There's a public thoroughfare going through my field. That's very inconvenient. I'm going to take the public thoroughfare and claim it as part of my field. And what I'm going to do is, I'm going to make a sort of service road. I'll build a service road around my field, and people can use that instead, and that way I don't have to have a broken field. Nosin, that which he gives to the people belongs to the people, so the service road now belongs to the people. Thank you very much, Mr. Man. Vishalo lo igio, but at the same time, he can't simply commandeer that thoroughfare for himself. So basically, he loses everything, right? He can't have the thoroughfare. So we see a situation where he basically took matters into his own hands. He commandeered the thoroughfare. He built this service road for the people. We say the people can keep the service road, and he cannot keep the thoroughfare. But now, if we say that a person is allowed to take matters into his own hands, linkod pizra, let him take a stick, velesiv, and let him sit on the thoroughfare, and anybody who tries to pass through the thoroughfare, he'll tap him with the stick. So maybe a firm tap. We'll give him a firm tap with the stick. So Amr of Zvid Mishmei Derave Gezeira Shamitin Loim Derech HaKalasun. So Zvid says, Rava, look, it's a concern that it's a Gezeira. We're concerned that maybe he's not gonna build a good service road for them, and they're gonna lose out. So if we say he can't commandeer the road. Rav Mishasha Amar Benosin Loim Derech HaKalasun. Rav Mishasha says, no, this is when we say that he loses the thoroughfare. He can't keep it. It's davka when he builds kind of a shvach service road. Ravashi says, Ravashi kol min atzad derech hakalasunu. By definition, whatever service road he's going to build to go around his field is going to be crooked, because krova lazeh v'rechok lazeh. I mean, by definition, the fastest way to get somewhere is a straight line, right? So, or I don't even know if that applies here, but basically there was a thoroughfare going through his field. He's now making a road to go around the field. Look, for some people it's going to be convenient because maybe they live closer to the sort of new route. For some people it's going to be inconvenient because it's going to be further from where they need to go. So Yachi, if that's the case, okay, fine. So that's why it doesn't work, because it's basically inconveniencing people. Now, if this is the case, that be'etzem he can't do this. The road going through his field is going to continue to belong to the public as a thoroughfare. Well, if that's the case, amai shelo lo igio. Well, then how come he can't take back the service road that he built? Which is a little confusing, because before shelo lo igio was a reference to the thoroughfare going through his field. Now it's referring to the new service road that he built. Okay. It's confusing, but okay. But why can't he take back, right? If we're saying that he can't keep the thoroughfare. So if he can't keep the thoroughfare, so then why can't he at least take back his service road that he built? No, take back the thoroughfare, fine, I can't do it, okay. But let me at least have my service road back. Mishum Rav Yehuda, it's like Rav Yehuda, Meitzu she'ech ziku bo rabim, also the kalkalo, that some kind of a border, or in this case the service road that the people, that the public kind of made theirs, so you cannot take that back. Okay, fine. Tashma coming here. Bala bayis sheniach peah mitzad echod. Okay, so if you have a guy, he's got a field, and he leaves a corner of his field for the poor people, and he designated, this corner is going to be peah. Uvo aniyim v'notnu mitzad acher. However, the aniyim came and took from a different corner. Zevoze peah, so both corners are now peah. But if we say that a person can take matters into his own hands, right, and now he's losing out, dafka, right? The people took peah from the other corner. Now we're saying that both corners are now peah. He's losing out. Amai zeveze peah. Why are both corners now peah? Linkod pizra v'leisiv. Let him take a stick and sit there and hit anybody who tries to take it. All right, that seems to be the solution around here. If ever there's a problem, take a stick, sit down, and solve it that way. Amar Rava says, Rava, my zevoze peah. What does it mean that both of them are peah? No, it doesn't mean that he loses both. Lefotchen minamaiser. Minamaiser means that, no, they're both peah, and he's parted from meiser. He doesn't have to separate meiser. So when he goes back to the other corner, that he designated that the Aniyim didn't take, he doesn't have to separate Meiser from Mikitatanis when the Brisa Mafkias Karmo, Vishkin Baboku Vatso. If a person makes his vineyard hefker, and then he wakes up early and harvests it, I guess he takes it back. Chai beferet of olos of shichov peah, so he's going to be chai for different tithes and things. Ufater min meiser, but he's going to be potter from meiser, and I guess in this case he's going to be potter from once he already set it as peah, so he's going to be potter from separating meiser for it. All right, fine. Okay, now we get to a new Mishnah. Nishbara kado b'reshus harabim. So if Ruvain's jug breaks in the public domain, v'huchlak echad b'amoyim o shalaka b'charsei chayiv, and then somebody slips in the water or gets hurt on the shards, chayiv. Ruvain is chayiv. Rabbi Yehuda Omer says, Rabbi Yehuda b'miskavin chayiv b'sheinu miskavin potter. Look, if he had intention to damage, then he's chayiv. If not, then he's potter. Okay, I think the Gemara is going to explain what it is. But I'll tell you, the rest of today's daf isn't ridiculously hard. It's not easy, but it's not ridiculously hard. Tomorrow is going to be hard. I think tomorrow's daf is going to be hard. It's BavaKama. As we've said, it's the big leagues. Says the Gemara, Amar V'Yehuda Amar Rav Loshanu Ela Shetinfu Kelev B'Amoyim Aval Hu Atzmo Potter Karka Olam Izikaso. So says Rav Yehuda, and then let's read that again. Amar V'Yehuda Amar Rav Loshanu Ela Shetinfu Kelev B'Amoyim. So Rav is assuming that Ruvain, whose jug broke in Rishus Harabim, did not give up ownership of the water. Okay, so he still owns the water, and this gets back to machlokas that we've seen before. That if you have a bor b'Rishus Harabim, if you were so it says Rav, it's only considered a bor b'Rishus Harabim if you were mafkirit, if you made it hefker. Shmuel, however, holds that even if you retained ownership of it, it's still a bor b'Rishus Harabim. So Rav is saying, well, Ruvain maintained ownership of the water, and therefore the water is not considered like a bor b'Rishus Harabim. It's where, bor b'Rishus Harabim, person gets hurt, so you're chayiv. But here it's considered his property, like his shore. So therefore, so what we're saying here is Amar V'Yehuda Amar Rav, says, read the name of Rav, Lo shanu ela shetinfu kelev b'amoyim. We're talking about if a fellow slipped in the water and his clothing got dirty. So here, in this case, he's chayiv, right? Like if his shore damages vessels, so he's going to be chayiv to pay for it. So here, if the fellow, slipped in the water and his clothing got dirty, so then okay, he's chayiv to pay. He's chayiv for whatever, his clothing got ruined, and so he's chayiv to pay for that. Aval, but if the fellow slipped and then fell to the ground, atzmo potter, but if he fell to the ground and bumped his head, potter karka olam izikaso, because so Ruvain then is going to be potter because he's not responsible for the damage. The ground, right? He fell and bumped his head on the ground, not on his water. He got hurt by the ground. So his water was a catalyst, right? It's a grama. His water caused the guy to lose his balance, and then he went crashing to the floor and got hurt when he bumped his head on the floor. But the water isn't the damager. The floor is the ground is the damager. The water is the catalyst that caused it. So it's a grama, and grama is potter by damage. Okay, so Rava says that, look, if he ruins his clothing on the water, okay, so he's chayiv. But if the water just caused him to slip and then he bumped his head on the ground, so then he's going to be potter. Kamisa kame de Shmuel, and Rabbi Yehuda says that when I said this before Shmuel, Amrli Shmuel said to me, Michdei, Avno v'sakinu maso, mibor lamadnu. Shmuel, as I just mentioned a minute ago, Shmuel treats this as bor b'Rishus Harabim. Shmuel treats this as bor b'Rishus Harabim. That regardless of if he was mafkir the water or not, he treats it as bor b'Rishus Harabim, and therefore, if the fellow gets hurt by a bor b'Rishus Harabim, so he is going to be so Ruvain is going to be chayiv. So again, Kamisa Kame de Shmuel says Rav Yehuda that when I said this before Shmuel, Amrli, he says to me, Michdei, let's see. Avno v'sakinu maso, that when it comes to a rock or a knife or a burden that you leave in Rishus Harabim, miboru lamadnu, we learn it out from bor. It's considered bor b'shus harabim. V'chulan ani korei boin, and I'll say by all of these examples, shor v'lo adam, chomer v'lo kelim, v'hani milil inin k'tala. That, right, we've seen before, I think, right, this limud of shor v'lo adam, chomer v'lo kelim, right, that the pasuk says, v'nafal shama shor o chamor. That if you have a pit, a bor b'shus harabim, and an ox or a donkey falls into the pit and dies, and that's why I read also right there, hani mila dinin ketala, right? Davka, the pasuk is talking about death. So if an ox or a donkey falls into the pit and dies, so then you're going to be chayiv for the shor of the chamor, but you're going to be right shor v'lo adam, chamer v'lo kelim. You're going to be potter if a human being falls into the pit and dies, or if vessels fall into the pit and die, so to speak, meaning they break. So then you're going to be potter. However, damages, if a person falls in and gets damaged, the reason why I said if a vessel dies, so to speak, is because if a vessel falls into the pit, it's going to break, and that's its death, so it'll be potter. But if a fellow falls into the pit and gets hurt, so then you'll be chayiv for damages. So again, v'chulan ani korei boin, but I'm on the fourth line of the page. By all of these, I will say by them shor v'lo adam. So yeah, you're chayiv if the ox falls into the pit and dies. Chomer v'lo kelim. So if the ox falls into the pit and dies, but not if a person falls into the pit and dies. Chomer v'lo kelim. If a donkey falls into the pit and dies, but not if vessels fall into the pit and break. But that pasuk is specifically in the context of death, but in the context of damages, adam chayav v'chelim pturin. So you'll be chayav if a person falls in and gets hurt, but vessels if they fall in and break, so that's basically their death. So you'll be potter. But if a person gets hurt, you'll be chayav. So therefore, says Shmuel, if Ruvain's jug breaks in Rishus Harabim, and Shimon comes and slips on the water, that's be'etzim a bor b'Rishus Harabim. If he gets hurt, Ruvain's going to be chayiv. So v'Rav, but the reason why Rav says it specifically if his clothing gets ruined, but not if he slips and bumps his head, is because he treats the water as mammon, not as a bor. Hanimile heichad afkarinu. It would only be considered a bor if he was mafkirit. Aval heichad lo afkarinu. But if he was not mafkir, the water in this case, mamonuhu, it is his property, and he will be. It's his property. And therefore it will be chayiv if it damages his clothing, but if he won't be chayiv as a bor b'shus harabim. Most of Avashai now Bashaya asks a kasha, v'nafal shama shor o chamer. Okay, that if an ox or a donkey falls into the pit, shor v'lo adam, chamer v'lo kelim. Okay, if an ox falls in and dies, but not a person. If a donkey falls in and dies, but not vessels. Mikan Amru, from here they said, Nafal l'socho shor v'kelev v'nishtabu. If an ox fell into a pit with its yoke and the yoke broke, Chamer v'kelev v'niskaru, or a donkey fell into the pit with its saddle and the saddle got ripped. Chayiv al behema, you can be chayiv for the animal, ufater ala kelev, but you'll be pater for the vessels. What is it similar to? La'avno v'sakino maso. It's similar to a stone, a knife, or a burden shenicham b'Rishus Harabim that a fellow left in Rishus Harabim v'zik when they caused damage. So the Gemara asks a technical question. Adraba ma domet lozeh mi ba'ilei. It shouldn't. A very technical point. It shouldn't be that the ox and the donkey falling into a pit are similar to a knife, a burden, and a stone in Rishus Harabim. Fakir, the stone and the knife and the burden are similar to the boar, right? The original example is the boar. So Ella Madom Elazeh, what is similar to the boar? Avno v'sakinu maso, a stone and a knife and a burden. She'enichim Rishus Harabim, that were left in Rishus Harabim v'ziku and they caused damage. Fine. Now, lefichach imitiach tzlochis ba'even chayav, and now if a if a jug hit against a stone and broke, you'd be chayiv. Reisha kasha l'Rav, v'seifa kasha l'Shmuel. The Reisha is a problem for Rav, the Seifa is a problem for Shmuel. Did anybody get that? Probably not. Probably because of that like strange technical detour that was in the middle. But the point is, the Reisha is talking about, you have these items in Rishus HaRabim that we're treating like a boar, which is a kasha on Rav, because Rav is saying that we're treating them like mammon. And the Seifa though says that if a jug breaks against this rock, you're going to be chayiv. Now, if it's a boar, we say that boar you're chayiv for kalim, right? So why would you be chayiv for the jug that breaks against the rock? You should be potter if it's boar, so that's going to be a problem for Shmuel. So again, so where am I? So Reisha kasha l'Rav, v'seifa kasha l'Shmuel, v'l'taimich tikshi lachi gufa. But the Gemara says, one second, before you start getting into the technicalities of the Reisha is a problem for Rav, the Seifa is a problem for Shmuel, how about this? The Brisa doesn't make sense. Reisha potter v'seifa chayiv. In the Reisha we're saying that we're treating these items like a boar, and therefore you can be potter for kalim. And now in the Seifa we're treating it like a shore, like mammon, and you can be chayiv for kalim. So Ella Rav matar tzatami, Shmuel matar tzatami. Rather, Rav is just going to explain the Brisa how he understands it, and Shmuel is going to explain the Brisa how he understands it. Rav matar tzatami. Rav is going to explain it his way. B'midvar mamurim. When do we say that we treat these items like a bor b'shus harabim? Kishehif kirun. If you were mafkir them, so then yeah, I agree. If you were mafkir them, then they're like a bor b'shus harabim. Avaloif kirun. But if he wasn't mafkir them and he still owns it, well then chayiv. Well, then you would be chayiv for the vessels. Lefichach, and therefore hitiach tzlochis bo'even chayiv. And if he was not mafkirit and it's treated like mamono, if his vessel then breaks into this stone that's considered like his mammon, he would be chayiv. Ushmuel matar tzatami. Shmuel explains it according to him. Hashta do amar et avno sakino maso kiboro dami. So now that we say that avno, sakino, and maso are considered like boar, and therefore you're potter for kalim, li Rabbi Yehuda, however, according to Rabbi Yehuda, the mechayiv on iske kalim bebor, that Rabbi Yehuda says that you're chayiv for vessels that break in a pit. Leficha chitiach tzluchisu be'evin chayiv, according to Rabbi Yehuda, if the vessel hit against the stone, which we're treating as a boar, and it broke, we're saying according to Rabbi Yehuda, who's mechayiv by iske kalim bebor, that you would be chayiv here. Amar Belazar, to wrap up the daf. Amar Belazar says, Belazar lo shanu elo sheniskol be'even v'noshuv be'even. We only say that you're chayiv when the vessel hits against the stone. If you tripped on the stone and the vessel then broke against the stone, then you'd be chayiv. Hava niskol bekarka, but if you tripped on the ground, just like tripped while you're walking, v'noshuv be'even, and then the vessel hit against the stone, then you would be potter kiman delok Reb Nosson. It's not like Reb Nosson. We saw Reb Nosson earlier. Well, we're already almost a month into BavaKama, so I don't remember exactly when we saw Reb Nosson. We saw it earlier in a case of if an ox, right? If Ruvain's ox pushes Shimon's ox into a pit, so now it's like a combination into Levi's pit. So now it's like a combination of Ruvain's Karen and Levi's bor. So according to Reb Nosson, they kind of split they split the damages. So now in this case, we're saying that. So Reb Elazar is saying that you'd only be chayav for breaking the vessel if he tripped on the rock and the vessel broke on the rock, that it's all from one source. But if he tripped on the ground and then the vessel broke on the rock, he would be, the owner of the rock would be potter, which is unlike Reb Nosson, because Reb Nosson says that it would be split, the damages would be split. Those who say Amar Belazar lo tema beniskol be'even v'noshuv be'even u'demechayev aval niskol bekarka v'noshuv be'even potter. Do not say that only when he trips when he trips on the stone and breaks the vessel on the stone, he would be chayiv. But if he tripped on the ground and broke the vessel on the stone, he would be potter. No, even if he tripped on the ground and then the evan hit against the vessel hit against the evan, even in that case, he would be chayiv. Kiman Reb Nosson, it would be like Reb Nosson, who kind of combines the damages from two sources. Wow. Friends, that was Daf Chof Ches, BavaKama. There was a lot on that daf. We saw the sugya. We spent a lot of time on the sugya of Ovid inish dina lenafshe. Can a person take matters into his own hands? Wow, it feels like that was ages ago. We saw the machlokas between Rav Nachman and Rav Yehuda, right? That in a situation where you can go to Bezdin and get this sorted out, Rav Yehuda says you have to go to Bezdin. You cannot take things into your own hands. Rav Nachman says no. If you know what the halacha is, you can take things into your own hands. Now, but everyone agrees in a situation of loss that if by the time you get to Bezdin you're going to accumulate loss. So then everyone agrees that you'd be able to take matters into your own hands. Then we got into this new Mishnah where like a jug breaks the Rishus HaRabbanim. So the interesting thing here was the machlokas between Rav and Shmuel that if you have something in Rishus HaRabbanim, if you were not mafkir it, so Rav treats it as mammon and Shmuel treats it as a bor Rishus HaRabbanim. That was the Chav Ches of Masechta BavaKama. Hope you enjoy. Peace out.